For a second, I thought I heard...
Heard what?
I thought I heard singing, sir.
Singing.
All right, we are finally in Russia. I've been over 6 months. I've been asking people around, hey, you know anybody from Russia? Because the awesome visual effects market that's obviously there in Russia, and I just wanted to talk to somebody from Russia. We've been to Germany, we've been to all over the world, but we haven't gone to Russia. So I'd like to introduce Konstantin Listratov. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, Listratov.
Listratov. Okay. I'm going to screw it up again.
Fine, just call me Konstantin. It's easy to pronounce.
Konstantin.
Yeah.
And you are the VFX Supervisor co-founder and producer at Trehmer Film.
Yeah, currently I'm co-founder and VFX producer and a little bit of everyone in quite new company called Trehmer Film. We are part of one quite famous Russian VFX company called Trehmer, with a history of almost over 20 years and film department. So you see three of us. The first one is the production. They shoot videos, all kind of videos, commercials, music videos. Next, you see the Trehmer Film, that's us. We're doing visual effects for feature films. And Trehmer CG, this is the oldest department. They were doing visual effects for commercials for 20 years.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was looking at your LinkedIn to kind of get a background on your history here, and it seems like it's been around for a while. And you started out as a generalist there.
Yeah, long ago I started as a CG generalist. It was 2003, and then I've moved on mostly as a 3D artist, doing effects, animation, lighting. So these are the three major directions I was moving. At some point I've started as a CG supervisor, and at some point I've worked at this company, Trehmer, few years ago as a CG generalist, and I'd like to share my experience in feature films, and we decided to create this new film department.
So you have, I just wanted to go back through memory lane a little bit of your history, and then we'll go into some general questions for you. You started out, if I'm not mistaken here, can you tell me a little bit about the visual effects education system in Russia and your general schooling here? I see MIREA, Moscow University of Radio Technics, Electronics and Automatics, and computer training at Bauman MSTU.
So the first one is the high school. So this is the basis of the education. It's quite good university. It's quite famous in Russia, but not well known in worldwide. So it gave me just the basics of maths and rest of technical stuff. The second one is not education in full meaning. It was like the courses, just a couple months. By that time, there was no CG education at all in Russia. There were just books, maybe some tutorials, not even much of them. Mostly books, really, because I have several bookshelves with old books, starting with 3D Studio Max version 3 or 4. This was my first 3D experience. And I've got my first job. It was a tiny VFX company. So I was educated myself, step by step, one by one shot. moving on and on. As I told, there was no education programs by that time. Right now we have several options like Scream School, Real-Time School, and some others. They have offline and online training, but this is not the high school like we used to learn. Like they give the education just in CG. They don't give you maths or any other things that I think it's also important.
Is it highly competitive as far as like visual effects wise, getting your name recognized within the area? I know you grew up in Moscow, if I'm not correct, and then you guys are basically, you're not very far from Mr. Putin over there. You're about you're not too far from Red Square.
Yeah, it's a couple miles.
A couple miles. That's pretty wild. And I think you have like a train yard or something back here, right? Behind you.
Yeah, there is a train, but the best transport in Moscow is the subway. So underground in Moscow is one of the famous things. The tourists always visit and do lots of pictures of it because it's a really very architectural thing. Because it's you have to visit to see it.
Yeah, if I ever had the money, I'd be out there in a minute. I'm Russian Polish myself. I don't know much about Moscow. I just remember a lot of films coming out being done with incredible visual effects. There's a war movie, I forgot it was completely produced in Russia. I think it was I'm trying to remember the name.
Maybe Stalingrad.
Yeah, Stalingrad, and that was incredible. Everyone always remembers the visual effects of that film. All of the the fire effects, explosions, all the scene. I mean, some of the most impressive. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, all the visual effects were done within the Russian Federation area.
Yeah, it was done in Russia, mostly in one company.
Kind of give you a history here. You started out as you were a CG journalist and technical director. What was it like, kind of growing up in Russia in general? Just just in general. I mean, is it just and then just finding your way out west to like London and so forth, to places like DNEG and all the way out to Weta Digital and so forth in New Zealand?
Yeah, it was a challenge and a kind of surprise for myself. It wasn't a goal to get directly into New Zealand. I was just doing the work I always liked. So, and still I like to ask my artists who work in my company if he publishes something to dailies. I always like to ask if he will put this shot in his show reel. So I would like to see that every single shot, every single image is that cool. So everyone would like to share it with others. So did I. I was working mostly in commercials. I think it's almost 10 years. If you check LinkedIn, my first movie VFX company was Double Negative. And that was a big surprise for myself because at some point I decided to try something new and started, I've done the cut of the reel and started doing applications all over the world. And DNEG were the first who did, who sent me an offer and I accepted it. But before it, there were all kinds of experiences, mostly commercials. I did a few films, but they were just a single project. That's why it was kind of a surprise for myself. And after being hired by DNEG, I decided to change my life and turn more into the films. So since that point, I was doing films. By the way, returning from DNEG, my old friends from Trehmer called me and asked me to help with one movie. It was local Russian movie, The Monk and the Devil. They asked me to build a small team if I have someone to do this movie. So I've built a team of 5 artists, and we've done about 60 or 80 shots in summary for this film. It has just a few scenes, complicated scenes. The rest of it were simple comp, cleanups and RODA. And finishing this movie, I've got the offer from Weta. I didn't believe that they will hire me when I was doing the application, because it's way too far from Moscow. It's all 30 or 40 hours of flight, and I didn't believe it's possible, because they have quite strictly requirements for FX TD, like 5 years of experience in feature films. And they require quite big filmography, and my reel was still mostly commercials, but this wasn't a barrier to get there, so they did an offer, and I can't refuse this. That in New Zealand.
Your reel is I was looking at your earlier reels, and they're they're really eye-catching and incredibly impressive, even if you would say you don't have all the experience of all these visual effects films. So I probably that's what they got, that what caught their eye. Did you happen to work with Rocky Van Oost or William Van Oost when you were out there on War of the Apes? He's a friend of mine. He works at he's an
No,
motion
don't
capture
remember.
animation. I don't know if you happen to bump into him.
No, the Apes was not the major project for me, because
Oh, okay.
the work there just 3 or 4 weeks, done a couple shots, and that's it. Because my main project there was Guardians of the Galaxy. So they were extending the FX team for this movie, and I've got in brand new building. They just renovated for FX department. So I'm the lucky one, because all facilities of that are not so good that I worked in.
How was it culturally jumping from Moscow to London and then to Weta in New Zealand? What was that like for you?
It's so different. The facilities and the workflow. The most shock I've experienced was in DNEG, because I've never used to work this way, because in Russia most of the artists are kind of generalists. So we have like 3D guys and 2D guys, and we don't have that much specializations. In DNEG there were lots of people that usually combined in myself, and even doing some simple things was so complicated to deliver in pipeline, for example. But in general it was so different, and the production culture is very different. I've gained so much knowledge, and I've done lots of notes in my pocketbook, like the dailies should build, how the assets should be delivered, and this was very impressive. And the life in general, because usually I've traveled a lot before, but I traveled like a tourist. And when you dive into life, into London, very busy city, it's quite common thing for European people, and maybe for other CG artists from worldwide, but in Russia it's not that style, so we don't move so much. Most of the companies located here in Moscow, so You don't have to travel so far, and this was very, very, very different. New Zealand is a beautiful country, so we walked so many miles by foot. I can't even remember. It's everything is there so different. Even the nature, the people, especially the natives who live there, Maori. So and the company itself also was not everyone thinks about that. So the company is spread among the town in several buildings, like 20 buildings, 20 different buildings. You asked if I met your friend. I'll tell you that quite hard to meet people there because the facilities are small. For example, 30 or 60 people in one building, you will never meet other people working on the same show. For example, I never saw anybody from animation department. We always received the animation caches from somewhere. And sometimes it was a little bit hard to communicate.
It's weird
They were
when I look at like satellite pictures of Weta Digital, it always looks like a hobbled together bunch of like mobile homes or something. It has sort of like a weird feel to it, and it's kind of stuck in the middle of this town. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just maybe just me. I've never been there, but I'm just saying. Whenever I see behind the scenes of like Lord of the Rings and all that, I'm like, it always feels like this. I mean, that's what it was basically. I mean, it was basically Peter Jackson building an entire team out in the middle of Wellington, and just like, okay, this is where we're setting up base camp. So just taking advantage of buildings that were not used for VFX or even built for VFX.
he did a great job because building such facility, such company in New Zealand, it's so hard because right now I'm facing kind of similar situation. It's quite hard to hire people from somewhere. The market around Moscow and Russia in general is quite small. I think it's in totally 500 artists around, like, I think 10,000 miles around Moscow. So, and there are 10 companies, more or less, who requires all of them at the same time. And it's quite hard to do the HRing. And Peter Jackson did a great thing, bringing so much people into another age of the world. And still everyone wants to get there.
Would you say that are you guys mostly Russian there, or would you ever throw out the idea? I'm assuming they would have to speak Russian, obviously, for international talent to come in. Do you have a lot of international talent? Is it mostly just Russians at your studio?
It's a pity, but we have only Russians. We don't have anybody else from outside Russia on board. But I hope at some point we'll be able to hire people from abroad. The problem is in salaries, I think. Life cost in Russia is smaller than in Europe and in London, and then it's quite hard to compete with London, for example. And our film industry is very young. Still, it's the film industry in Russia started in the beginning of 20th century, but the new wave of it started, I think, like 15 or 20 years ago. Because at some point when the USSR was falling, the same happened with the film industry. All the oldest Russian facilities where lots of films were filmed are still in poor condition. And only new companies who started 10 years ago bringing some money in the industry and shooting some new films.
It's interesting you're speaking about like competition and rates. And again, I'm not gonna inquire as far as the rate difference, but we had some recent guests on our show where we have guys from Los Angeles complaining about the fact that the rates are lower in certain areas, or at least I should say like in London. And then, of course, saying salaries are even. I see such a contrast around the world, even where I'm at, which is Chicago. There are so many different post houses with so many different, limits on rates, as far as like a day rate, that you have to customize your rate to different post houses, even where I'm at, and it's really kind of frustrating. You know what I mean? It's kind of like there's this huge contrast. But so is there any good schools out there for Russian, VFX aspiring VFX artists that you could recommend in the Moscow area, where you would say this one's the best and this is where we hire from?
We have one school in Moscow called Scream School. I can send you the link, for example. But there are no guarantee that you will hire the good artist from there. We've got just a couple guys, I think, who were there, but in general, I think that the Life is the best school in Russia because it's better to start from the lowest position in any company, and you'll get much more experience. I never used to learn in other countries. Maybe it works there better, but in Russia, I always recommend young students and people who want to get into the industry to get the basics of the compositing or 3D from the digital tutorials or kind of any of them, and start as soon as possible doing any job. Any simple job, but in real companies doing real projects.
I was going to ask in regards to Trehmer Films that you founded, what drew you back, or at least what really drew you back to come back to Trehmer and basically take on this big task of this, kind of building this entire department?
At some point, I decided to move on as a supervisor. My first company was N3 Design, where I was leading a team of artists, like 20, 25. But that was completely different. That was mapping and broadcast design. So that was the thing that I didn't want to move on. I want to do films. So after N3 Design, I moved to Argunov Studio. I think maybe you even heard about it. I saw in the comments on YouTube someone was asking about some companies. So Argunov was started in 2014 as a brand new film company, and I was very excited about it and decided to join them as a CG supervisor. So they hired me because they know what N3 Design is. It's quite hard to work there because they have lots of shows at the same time and you have to deliver tons of content at the same time. So this is the thing that allows you to plan and to build and manage the team. That's how I've started in film as a supervisor. But then I had a contract with DNEC as an artist, but it still gave me a good understanding of how the workflow should work, because lots of Russian facilities are trying to build their own way, their own like pipeline or own production scheme. But finishing the contract, I was filled with ideas of how I can adapt what I saw in DNEG to the Russian film production, because it's a little bit different. The people are different, the budgets are not so high, and that's why I've started to manage this team in Trehmer Film. This was the challenge for myself, to try not to do myself as an artist, but to build a team and to deliver to each of the team member my ideas and to build the whole movie. I mean, in terms of visual effects, we were quite free in ideas with this director, so it was kind of artistic show. And then I've decided to move on and try to grow something similar to what I saw, because five artists is not that much. And now we have more than 30 employees, and I hope it's not the end. We will move on, because I think 100 artists is a good balance, because smaller company is hard to keep on a balance between lots of shows and lack of shows.
Yeah, I mean, just so you're currently at 30. Could you kind of give a breakdown as far as like what that 30 consists of? And is that just your specific department of the three, Trehmer Film, or is that for the entire Trehmer?
No, Trehmer is 3 companies, and each one is doing their own work. We have each of us have our own pools of clients. So we work with the films, and we have clients and connections in the film industry, and for example, advertising department, working with advertisement agencies, quite worldwide, Leo Burnett, BBDO, and that's it. And production company has their own company clients. So we consist in one space, in one location, but have our own specifications and like different servers, different pipelines.
As your current job as VFX supervisor producer, can you talk about some of the challenges in regards to the bidding, and then of course just management, and then just everyday sort of workflows?
So now it's a little bit easier to bid and to gain new clients. The hardest period was a couple years ago, when we didn't have show reel. We had couple small reels for projects we did, but that was not enough to get big job in and complicated job. So we were trying to get on board in almost any films. And the most, I think, important movie for us was T-34. Probably you saw the reel. It's blew up our box office in Russia. It became the third, I think, the third successful movie in the history for the last 20 years in Russia. If you'll jump on my Behance or Vimeo page, better Behance, this is in the middle. In the middle you see the fields. Yeah, this is it. So we did quite challenging sequence, and the challenge was for us to develop some tool set that doesn't exist, to do such landscapes and to have artistic control. We did about 50, 60 shots, like this you saw with the aerials. And this show was the most challenging for us because we didn't have enough artists, we didn't have technologies, and we just had a wish to get on in this show. So we did it. Everybody survived. We had even weekends, so this was not so dramatic that it may be. And after this, we started getting more and more projects. So the thing is to do the first complicated job successfully, and then you can dive in the market. So the clients now knows us. So there is a company, Trehmer, who doing films also, and we are kind of in a pool of Moscow vendors right now. I think we are about in top 10 right now, starting from scratch, because 3 years ago there was no company called Trehmer Film. And now we are in the top challenging shows in Russia.
So besides having a good, solid handling of the market in Russia, you do have a very solid edge in regards to the size of your studio and the costs of production when bidding between different jobs and so forth.
Yeah, my foreign colleagues don't believe me sometimes how many people did, for example, this sequence because it was like about 15 or 20 artists and production team. Production team was just a couple of us. So right now I'm bidding lots of shows. I'm doing estimates, I think 1 or 2 per week or even more. So trying to get a job for the company. It's completely different, like you search the job for you, but you feel the responsibility for the for you multiplied 30 times. Yeah, because in Russia there is no contract system that is used in Europe or US or New Zealand. People are waiting or expecting from you kind of permanent employment. And in terms of the Russian market is so small that the contract system, I'm afraid, will not work at all. So the people are expecting from you that you give the smooth amount of work without any bumps on it or any gaps in it. So this is, I think, the most challenging thing. Right now, for example, we have a couple very, very heavy shows, and it's hard times for the guys. But this period is not that long, and it gives us the ability to choose the project, not to take everything that is in the water, and it gives us the ability to fill the gaps, I mean in money. So we have a short break between the shows. I don't need to break the contracts, so the people may do some research. We can do some breakdowns for further beats, and this is right now it's a little bit easier to work.
That's
But
interesting. I didn't even think about that specific
yeah,
angle.
yeah. So when you do your shots, just walking in every day, like I did in Beta, it was amazing. It was cool. Um, but I didn't realize the work of the production team, of the producers. Usually you see someone from the production team as a VFX producer, and you think it's a cool guy just counting the money and everything is perfect in his or her life. But facing with their problems right now, it's a huge work, and it's not that easy that maybe from someone's else point of view.
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people, they don't appreciate enough about producers and so forth. That you don't realize what they're doing is they're keeping the heat on, and they have to do what they got to do.
Sometimes I just want to sit in my corner and do some particle simulation, and nobody will touch me, because right now I'm in the office, and it's very good that nobody touches me, because I'm always in tons of conference calls, dailies, and tons of questions, solving problems, any kind of problems. Not only the shots exactly. We need to hire someone. We need to buy this one, or we don't have money right now, but we need this. We need to find this money, like this.
Sounds like quite a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. But it's challenge. The life has its own taste.
How much creative input do you have now in the process? Are you still doing look dev and sort of critiquing stuff and bringing your past experiences into the productions?
I don't have much time to do shots or do anything myself, but I still take part in all the dailies. I look through the most important shots and look the vlogs. I always keep myself near concept artists, because they play a very important role in our production. We have the reputation of artistic company in Moscow, because I was diving in this market, like a guy who has nothing to lose, like this. So I have always some contracts in my email from foreign companies. So it gave me kind of free of my mind. So I don't need uh, um, to do what exactly wants the client to get this job. For example, um, um, I mean. I always try to give some new, fresh idea, um, not being afraid to lose a contract or a job, and that worked. So this was, I think, the key element in bringing our onto the market.
Just want to share some of your experiences working on your show reel. We're just going to go through it really quick. Is that fine?
Okay, okay. I tried not to spoil not too much about Weta Digital, because they have their own secrets.
Yeah.
This was, uh, I think, the most challenging and mind-blowing group of shots.
Seems like everybody worked on this movie. Everyone I interview, they've worked on Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I don't know. Must have been a lot of visual effects work on this film. I never, you know what? I, I don't know. I'm just not a. I tell my guests, I'm like, don't hate me. I'm not a comic book guy. I don't know. I just can't get into them. I can't get into those movies. I'm the guy waiting for Dune and Blade Runner 2049. You know what I mean? I was pretty impressed with this shot. This is a pretty cool shot.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will tell about it especially.
So you have a very heavy background in particle effects too.
Uh, Yeah, mostly I think fluids and particle effects, because these are the things that required in commercials. For example, fire and smoke is the thing that you will not have the ability to try in working in an advertisement, because kind of dirty elements. But the water is the thing that many commercials require.
Are you doing this mostly in Houdini? I'm assuming.
Uh, yeah, at some point I've switched to Houdini. Previously I was Maya user for 10 plus years.
Yeah, it's like, I was watching it was because they just released the new Terminator movie, and they have the new Liquid Terminator guy, and
Mm.
the edges always, not in your case, not in this case, you can see it's more organic, it's kind of like extruding out, but in their case it always felt like you could tell it was like a transition digitally, you know what I mean? Between where the liquid or the Terminator face was, and that's my personal opinion. I know I'm sure a lot of work went into it. We just interviewed a guy from Digital Domain, whose team worked on that movie, so I'm not gonna try to say anything. But it's very difficult for, I find, like these, whether it's I forgot the name of the movie with the robot girl, um, but she was like half robot, half human, or whatever, and always that transition line between is always very difficult.
In this case, they were both of CG doubles, and David Hasselhoff was built extremely fast. They've built the CG double in, I think, 3 weeks. Yeah, this one is also CG double. It's pure CG. The compers in Weta are very, very strong, and I think that I can't say, but it feels like the best compers are there, because I saw what they did. You see for example, the result with the CG double. It looks good, but not perfect. And after comp, you believe in them. They're really, really cool.
What's the relationship between being sort of a technical director and your compositors that take your work and composite it? Do you see anything that's important between the two?
Yeah, it's very important, and I was in the new wave of data changes, because previously, before I came, they have the departments that don't communicate between each other. So everyone was doing their job and never see who will do the comp for the shot. When I was there, they started kind of experiment for them. There was a mix in our building. There were effects team, some lighters, and comp team, and it was much easier to work this way, because someone from comp department came directly to me and asked to do a special thing for special needs. For example, but I didn't do the renders myself. I'm not allowed even, though. I rendered just one shot when it was very critical, and it was easier, really easy to render with Mantra, bypassing all the pipeline restrictions. um, but in most cases, Lighter gives the result to comp. So we were gathering, all three of us, together and discussing what the comper needs. For example, if he need some special mask, he asked me to do kind of life spending particles, for example. I do this pass, and the Lighter do this render for him. So it was very nice to have this way of the communication, especially in complicated shots.
I'm assuming you guys rendered everything in deep.
Yeah. I've tried to render it as I used to render, for example, in Moscow with the mate, like holdouts in alpha channel, and the soup with fixed soup or comp soup ran to me and told me, "You're on Weta. Never do this before. Next time we render only deep here."
They seem to be the deep kings. You know what I mean? They're not just simply using deep for holdout masks. They're doing it full deep. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they comp everything in deep. We were trying to implement deep here in Moscow, but it's so heavy. But yeah, that I can't
Yeah, no
imagine
kidding.
what hardware they use on that, because I didn't see the connections and wires. But what was that? I don't know.
So you're not even aware of some of the stuff that you were even working at Weta. You're like, I don't know how this is like magic computer here, and I don't know what it's doing, but it's getting all this data in, and I'm able to.
Yeah, yeah, they have. By the time I think they had the biggest render farm in the industry, like 3,000 nodes
Wow.
or something like this. Yeah,
Where's that
but
located? Is that like at that same studio, or is it somewhere else
I don't
located on that
know.
island?
Yeah, there was a myth that
Some
the
B.
render farm is somewhere near the or even on the bottom of the sea, because the water is very cold and they use this water to cool the farm. But I'm not sure. Nobody knows really. Nobody saw this farm, because I've asked the group or anybody else if he had kind of excursion to this building where is this farm located. Nobody. No, I don't know. You see the CPUs on the list, and that's enough. They work, and that's it. You don't have to know anything more than this. Okay.
That's interesting. It's like Area
Yeah.
51 or whatever in New Zealand. See, yeah, I want to spend too much on time in real because we want to get questions. I know you're on a little bit of a time constraint. But yeah, it's really awesome. A lot of your work, and I'm assuming a lot of what your contribution to this was a lot of particle effects and so forth, and simulations.
Yeah, this is the shot I've did, I think, in 4 or 5 weeks. So including lighting and render and comp. So I did it completely myself.
Any recommendations of any websites or places to learn Houdini for these types of effects? I know that they have. I know a lot of people are saying that a lot of really good training is. I can't remember the website. Oh, it eludes me up. I'll figure it out by the end of the show. But we talk a lot. We talk a lot about it, and it just seems like there's a lot of. I was just at the Mill in Chicago at a user group meetup, and they were talking about doing some Houdini sims and saying how you guess what, you have to learn scripting. Too bad, Get over it.
No, I hate these technical things. So I do surprise sometimes on the interviews when I trying to get the contract, because I'm talking about that I don't like Houdini as Houdini, for example, because there are too many technical things in it, and sometimes people are forgetting about what are we doing. We are doing the imagery, so we are doing the picture. It should look nice, and doing too many scripting and notes and blah blah blah. You forget about the artistic part of the work, and that's the problem. I don't like even the name technical director. So not the technical director. I prefer to call myself an artist.
Yeah.
So
I come from a TD background, which is kind of weird because they called us technical artists. Like that was my job title working at what is now NetherRealm Studios on Mortal Kombat. And it was just like technical director. I started as a character setup artist. That was a really fancy title, setup artist, And then went to character technical artist. And like It's weird though. I even agree though, but that those two words really don't they don't feel like they should mesh together. Technical artist, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Technical director or particle artist, for example, it's better. So I was always trying to focus on the image, and no matter what is under the hood. So I don't like very complicated tools or very sophisticated techniques. I always try to use something simple that doesn't require supercomputer or super hardware, and that's why I recommend for everyone, because diving too deep into the scripting or I mean in kind of simple job. For example, the water is as is, and in most parts you don't need to do lots of programming, or that's it. You should be the highly skilled developer to do something really different. But even in this case, I prefer to leave the tools development for technical directors, and for the shot creation to the artists. For example, yeah, what you saw with the river and the clothes was nothing fancy, but the balance between the forces, the proper constraints hidden in the proper places. For example, I don't know how the clothes works in Houdini. I used Maya to do the clothes theme because it was easy for me by that time, and that was the key, not to spend too much time. And the water was Houdini water. If I saw too many splashes, for example, I've that back in Maya. Quick iteration. I've got another clothes theme, and that's it. I have a special breakdown, for example, for this shot on my Vimeo channel. If you'll be interested, or someone else will be interested, he can see most of the shots on my show reel. You can find on Vimeo. It's the hands, so it's better on Vimeo in this case. Or you can, you can check this one, because this is the shot from this show. I recommend you to scope down, and you'll find the scene. Yeah, that's it.
Do you find that Maya, the Maya's newest particle tools are sort of? I'm a Maya guy too, so I mean, I just find that getting that done in Maya, you just kind of go back to Maya. I mean, I know Houdini too. I teach Houdini, but yeah, you're completely right. I mean, it's very highly technical, and sometimes it gets in the way of the art.
Uh, this shot I've started doing with the Bifrost in Maya because it was year, I think 2015 or 16, I don't remember exactly, but this was almost first release of Bifrost in Maya, and I was eager to try it, and I've tried, and I faced with the problem that I have 3 weeks and the shot should be delivered, and Bifrost is crashing. It is crashing again and again. I've done half a seam till this vortex, and it was crashing. I've got all the details I would like to see. I've got the bubbles, everything, but it was crashing again and again. So I was not able to render it, even some. So that's why I jumped quickly into Houdini and did it in 3 weeks, because I have no choice. I have no other option to do it.
If you don't mind, I would like to transition, since we're almost out of time here, to your Q&As from the people that have.
We have some more time if you
Okay.
want. But
I don't want to keep you.
fine, I have like extra 15-20 minutes.
Yeah, I was just taking a look at some of your reel. I can tell it's very heavy in particle effects and so forth. When you were doing Ant-Man and so forth, was that mostly Houdini or was that Maya?
And for me was completely Houdini, but most of the pipeline of DNEC was in Maya.
Gotcha. And then War of the Planet of the Apes?
Yeah, the same. This was the first year, I think, or not the first year, but this was maybe the fifth show in the company that was doing in Houdini, because previously they used only Maya with the Synapse. They have their own proprietary tool, Synapse, for particle and fluid simulations. So this sand effect I was doing in Houdini. But this gave a lot of pain, for example, for getting the data from Maya workflow, from Maya pipeline to Houdini and publishing it back. I think that now they have success with it because by the time I worked, there was so small tool set for Houdini. So there were no special tools, for example. Even publishing was done by one node that worked at some day and doesn't work on the next day.
Or different between versions?
Yeah.
The thing that drives me nuts about Houdini is I do training for Houdini on CG Circuit, and like just the next version, the node's been replaced with other nodes. So I get people complaining like, where is this at? I go, this is why I post on my tutorials. I used Houdini version this, so you're gonna have to revert in order if you want to follow this, and then you're gonna have to figure out whatever node that Side Effects decided to change it to. You know, so it's yeah. I mean, I think this is gonna probably take up a bulk of our questions here because these questions we got some people here with questions. So let's jump in. We got Matthias Backman. It says nice to get some insights from artists around the world. So here's a few questions for Konstantin. It says, can you tell about the differences in budgeting and therefore payment between Russia, Europe, in some cases London, and New Zealand?
So the rates are similar, to be honest, according to the life cost. So I mean, if you earn good money, for example, in Russia, it doesn't mean that you will earn the same in London. So I mean, in terms of life cost, so your quality of life will be similar, or even sometimes it may be even poorer if you move, for example, to London, where it's quite high costs. But in general, comparing with New Zealand, for example, Weta pays quite good because lots of people are coming there from from all over the world, from the top VFX production houses from everywhere, and they come in there buying houses, and half of them I think staying there forever. Really, because people there stay for 10 or 20 years. In London, what I saw is completely different situation. So people were coming for short contracts, like 3 months, half a year, or year. And I think it doesn't matter how much you will be paid in London. It's still hard to live there, especially with family. So in general, I think you can keep your life quality level at the same. What about the payment? It's we don't have the contracts like it usually goes in UK and in London. So we've got the kind of salary and trying to keep it permanent and consistent for the whole period. Still, the employee wants to stay with us, or still we would like to stay with him. uh,
It says there are some rumors in the industry that software piracy is still a problem in Eastern Europe, and this also adds into the lower prices. Can you say anything to those rumors?
yeah, there are some bad things and histories about East Europe and Russia in general. But this is the problem of budgets that we are able to work with. So in some cases, there are no way to fill the whole company. For example, to get all the pure licenses, and sometimes our companies have to cheat a little bit. But until you've got the big project, for example, right now we get the TPN certificate. If you know what is it, this is the thing that allows us to work with foreign companies like Disney or Marvel, and we have to keep our history as pure as possible. But in general, yeah, there is a problem in budgets, so you even don't have money to buy it. And in terms of our country or other countries like our neighbors, there are so few clients and so few companies that can buy it, and there will be no way um, for the industry to grow up and to buy at some point. So I think it's maybe even good idea to have special offers for the East Europe countries if they work for example on the eternal market. If you'd like to work for the Hollywood, so you got the full range of price. Or if you work on the local market, you got your own prices. And I think this will bring more official clients.
His last question is, I rarely see any Russian VFX studios working on big Hollywood movies, but watching their breakdowns on national productions would say that they could deliver the quality. Is that a political thing, or what are the reasons for that?
I think that's a bit of everything. Of course, there are lots of political issues, and um, also the problem is that we need any of the company, not only us, but any company requires the TPN certificate. And then in Russia, there are no VFX companies who held it. So nobody will have the ability to send you the cut for beat, for example, until you get this certificate that guarantees the absolute safety of this content from the major houses.
So it's just a matter of certification.
Quite cost-efficient thing, because you have to build the proper network. You have to pass the assessor, who costs quite a lot. So even for the small company, it may be, for example, $20,000-$30,000 to spend to get this certificate. It doesn't give you the client, but it just gives you the ability to take part in bids and to calculate estimates.
I think this is it. This is the last question here. Morad FX there are big CG companies in Russia. It's Argunov Studio, Main Road Post, is going to list them off here. CGF, Asymmetric VFX, crazy website, by the way, love it. Film Direction Effects, and more. How does this whole industry work in Russia? Is there a problem with getting big projects? Is there enough to go around for everyone?
There are lots of projects and enough projects for everyone, even though the projects sometimes are so big that there are not enough vendors on the market. Sometimes we have even refuse some sequences we've been offered, or even shows because they have insane deadlines. So all the companies you see are kind of enough of them for the market. Some of them are already working for the Chinese market and Korean. So I hope we will also get some clients from China because they're expanding and getting bigger and bigger. Maybe we'll also try to expand to get on the West market.
How would you compare the quality of the product done by your company and Russian CG companies compared to world leaders like ILM, Framestore, Mill, etc.?
There are things that our company, I can tell what CGF can do or Asymmetric can do. I'm responsible for what we do. So comparing to ILM, Framestore, and others, for example, I think we can deliver any kind of environments easily, kind of set extensions or effects. But I don't know any Russian company, and including us, who can do the CG doubles and creatures and characters, CG characters on the level ILM or Framestore do. So there are some effects and some kind of movies we can handle with, but there are some level that even all of us, all the companies are in this list will not be able to deliver.
The very last question we have here, what's with India and China, which I think you just discussed? Do you hire people from there to do a job or vice versa? How does it all go?
No, we don't hire anybody from China or India because I don't know why. It's quite hard to bring someone in Russia to work, to get a work visa. We've got very, very high taxes to pay for the foreign, and there are lots of people in Russia, very talented people who even move to LA or London or to New Zealand. There are lots of Russian, Ukrainian, or Belarus people. So I think it's enough to grow up inside the country, not to bring someone else from other countries. But we have a couple reliable partners in India for the roto and cleanup jobs. So there are like a couple small companies.
Yeah, they're really growing in that. I constantly see these, like, because I follow a lot of Facebook pages and so forth, like jobs. It's like all over India. Match moving, integration, roto, so it's crazy.
It's still quite good technical job. It's very good to have kind of option if you have like a couple of weeks and we have 100 shots to do roto. We know where to drop it.
Well, I think we're coming to the end here. Thank you for the interview, sir. I know we had a lot of our hours are a real difference. Evening there, morning here for me. So it's great to finally get some feedback from Russia. I've wanted so desperately to find somebody, and I know a lot of people were recommending people. But yeah, this has been an awesome interview. Is there anything before we take off that you'd like to share, or any advice and so forth in regards to management in the VFX industry? And
First of all, I'm happy and a little bit proud that I'm the first Russian in your channel who did the interview, because yeah, at some point I was first Russian in the DNEC, so it's cool to be the first. So about the recommendations, I think you need to have a pretty clear goal and move to this goal straight directly, and not to be afraid of anything. So take part in any shows with any teams, and even getting in New Zealand, for example, who I know lots of people are dreaming to get to Weta. Never give up, move on.
I'll be quite honest, it just seems like people, they get to that Shangri-La and then they kind of head back home. You know? They end up at home, you know what I mean? It's like, and they seem a lot happier there, more of a medium-sized studios, you know what I mean?
To get the experience, it's more important, because sitting in one place and working in the small company the whole life, you'll never see how it should look, for example. And if you have the ability to travel a little bit, to work here and there, and you've got some ideas. For example, it's quite hard for me to move right now because I have a couple of kids, and for example, 10 years ago, it was much easier for me to just to throw the bag into the plane and go to another side of the world. So many people facing the situation that they have to stay somewhere, and maybe at some point home will be the better place.
Well, awesome. Thank you again, Konstantin, for everything you're sharing. And again, if you guys want to check out some of the links, I'll have them provided. How do you pronounce the company, Trehmer? I'm saying it like horribly, I'm sure.
Yeah, in Russian it's Trehmer.
Wow. Okay.
So
I'm not going to try to, yeah. I'm never going to do it, sorry. Yeah, so you can check out his LinkedIn, his IMDB, and again, I'm sure as the future increases internationally, we're all going to be working together here, and as the VFX industry continues to grow. So I think it's really cool, again, just to see different backgrounds around the world. I don't know where left on the globe for me to go to, but that's, yeah, I think this has been an awesome interview. Thanks again, sir. I appreciate it.
thank you so much. Thank you.